Okay, so last week we were discussing two things, mythology, and in the second hour I had Bob Tuskin on, and we scratched the surface of what is the trivium. You can also at solvingtheradio.com grab the archive and Orion radio archive for more radio that I made in the past. And I put that up there. So you can check that out if you like. And today I had in mind one of two things. I came here upon a story. This is, let me see, where have I got it here? This is it, The Lady of the Fountain. This is a Welsh or a Scottish. I'm not sure about this origin, but it's about a story that includes King Arthur. You've all heard of the legendary King Arthur, right? And I read the first couple of things, and it's filled with all kinds of old English words also, but and hard to pronounce words, but that doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of that. You know, I mentioned sometimes that my English is not so good, but you try speaking Dutch, huh? I don't worry about that much, to be honest. So, the other thing was a continuation of Symbol, Sex and the Stars. We were still discussing rocks and stones and upright stones and menhirs and things like that. So I do these subjects, these mythological things, because they can help pierce through the religious dogmas that have been used to create not only Christianity, but also the other religions that we know. They all tie back to these mythological stories. Most mythological stories also have a creation story, for instance. And a lot of them have the same elements in them. And the mythology that I study the most is the Indian philosophy. There is a philosophy in there, but the Indian mythology. They are what's known as the Vedas. There's a couple of well-known books, like the Bhagavad Gita. I heard someone say that there is a description of weapons in this Bhagavad Gita, that they used horrible weapons, which would be like atom bombs. Okay, now I read the whole thing, and there's no such reference in there. Okay, so it's not in the Gita. Not in the Bhagavad Gita. There are such descriptions, however, found in the Mahabharata. And now the Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is quite big. I started reading that when I was 20 or something. And that's 26 years ago. And I still haven't been able to finish it because it's too difficult, for one, to pinch through all the nonsense and try and find out what are they really trying to say here. And it's there's too many books available. There's the Mahabharata starts out with Canto 1. And there's enormous amounts of cantos. It ends with 10, I believe. They call that the Krishna book. But you have to realize that this Mahabharata is full of references to the Upanishads, for instance. And so you have to read them also. There's no end in reading the Vedas. And they, after years of study, I found that they coincide, look alike, are the same as other mythological stories. It's just that the names have changed. But the certain elements are always the same. Even names look alike. Like, for instance, the Vedas, that I just talked about, but you also have the Edda. You take away the V, you add a D, you get the Edda. And that's also a story about two brothers having a war. Okay, that's the same in the Mahabharata. It's basically a story about two brothers having a war. In the last segment, I was talking about these two brothers, and I just got the book, so I can name it. It's verse 2, chapter 1. And first, I'll just read verse 1 for you. It's Dhritarashtra. He's a king. He's blind. He's sitting in his palace, and he has a servant. His servant is named Sanjaya, and this Sanjaya has the ability to remote view. And so Dhritarashtra said, "O Sanjaya, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight?" Okay, the sons of Pandu, that's the brother of Dhritarashtra, but Dhritarashtra is blind, and he actually, according to the ethics of Vidur, he was not in a position to be king. So the sons of Pandu, they are now claiming that they should be kings, okay? So in text 2, Sanjaya says to the king who's sitting in the palace, the blind king, "O king, after looking over the army gathered by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana," and that's the name that I forgot in the first segment, went to his teacher and he began to speak the following words. So Duryodhana and the sons of Pandu are considered brothers. And then in text 3, it goes on about all the other people that are there to fight. On the side of Pandu, there's Bhima, of course. He is the strong one. Arjuna is the best with bows. And there's unpronounceable names like Yuyudhana, Virata, and Drupada. And there's Dhritarashketu, Gekitana. And it goes on and on and on about these warriors. And the thing is that they say that this book that consists of 18 chapters was spoken by God or Krishna or Christ or whatever you want to call it at this battle of Kurukshetra many thousands of years ago. And so each day he would do one chapter. And so there's 18 days to this whole war, in which they claim 6 billion people died, which is, of course, a ridiculous high number. And this book is contained, basically, it's 3 parts of 6, 3 chapters of 6. It's divided into 3, like a trinity. Trinity is one of the most important things that come out in all of these mythologies, the use of trinities. There is, of course, a lot of trinity. For instance, solution, problem, reaction is one such a trinity. No. So that about the Bhagavad Gita. There's different translations. This one is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He is the leader and creator of what you people know as the Krishna movement. You know, the people shouting Hare Krishna, dancing along in the streets. So you see how far people can take this. They take everything that's in this book literally. Now, and that's very dangerous. If you take mythology literally, you're going to end up in traps that you can't escape from. And you have to use double think to keep your vision stable. So you have to be untrue to yourself. You have to be a traitor to yourself. Okay. So let's see. What should we do, people? Should we do Arthur or symbols and sex? I haven't seen anybody in the chat making a wish for either one. Not that I asked for, but... yeah. Or you can call in, of course, and talk about anything. You can also call in, ask questions or make comments about topics that you like. The number 716-213-6816. Keep an eye on this screen board here, call board. No, there's no screening. I drag you on the air without knowing who you are. Okay, so let's continue here. We were talking about rocks in Ernest Busenbark. We are about halfway this book. Even continuing then, even more than large quaint rock formations, natural cavities, this is the last paragraph from last week, just to get back into it. Natural cavities and fissures in the earth have always been peculiarly fascinating for superstitious people and have been regarded with a mixture of fear and wonderment. Ancient beliefs regarding the significance of caves, caverns, and clefts led to the custom, which still persists in certain parts of the world, of passing children, and adults as well, through openings and crevices as an act of purification and rebirth from the womb of Mother Nature. So you see this Gaia, it says Mother Nature in capital letters. Well, not the whole word, but the first letters. So you see this Gaia nature is very old. Now, when the rulers of Travancore in southern India ascend the throne, they are transformed from the Nayar caste into Brahmans by passing through a golden cow or lotus flower, which then becomes the property of the Brahmin priest. Okay, so I found this word Nayar, and I'm thinking, what the heck is that? A caste? It says, ascend the throne, they are transformed from the Nayar caste into Brahmans. I said in previous events that there's 4 castes. You got the Brahmans, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras. So continuing here with this Najar thing about what it is. So Najar, also spelled Nair, Hindu caste of the Indian state of Kerala. Before the British conquest in 1792, the region contained small feudal kingdoms, in each of which the royal and noble lineages, the militia, and most land managers were drawn from the Najar and related castes. Okay, so the way I read this, with the backup that I have from the Vedas, it reads as follows. It says feudal kingdoms, okay? The region contains small feudal kingdoms. Now, as I said before, in the past, India used to be all kinds of kingdoms. You know, all kinds of kings over there. And at some point, this guy called Gandhi came along, and all of a sudden, India is united. Okay? That's strange. Not that all of the kings all of a sudden disappeared, but what we see now is that there is a united India. This was helped along a lot by what Gandhi did. And this has to do with an agenda that is taking place step by step by step. I said this when I made Dutch radio. I said, well, it started out with the 7 provinces here where I live. And then it became the Holland. And that was some while ago, okay? And then Holland, they went together with Belgium and Luxembourg, and we had the Benelux. And then we went together with the rest of Europe, and we had the European Union. And what does the European Union do? It only listens to what the United Nations is saying. So you see this gradual growing of all places on the world into a one world governance or government, whatever you want to call it. And Gandhi played an important role in this. This is how they use heroes for their own agenda. So, continuing here, in each of which, it says in the Encyclopedia Britannica, in each of which the royal and noble lineages, okay, those are your kings and stuff like that, you know, they are belonging to the Kshatriya class. Okay, and the Kshatriya class came from the Brahmana class. So, a Najar caste is the same as a Brahmana caste. Because from them come the kings, the militia, which is the military, which is also Kshatriya. Most of the land managers, those are your Vaishyas. Okay, they are the third caste. Militia is the second caste. Brahmana is the first caste. Okay, so we're drawn from the Nayas and related castes. Okay, but Nayar is Brahmana caste. The high caste. The priest class is that. The ones that twist and turn every little bit of information they can get their hands on. During British rule, Najars became prominent in politics, government service, medicine, education and law. Well, of course, these Brahmanas, they would secretly work with the British government, the British Empire, while telling the people all the kinds of nonsense you get from the Vedas, that they have to pray to Kali or Durga or whatever. Religion is only used to control the people. So that was the Nayar. There's another, I believe I have another here, Nayar. There's more things related to it, according to Wikipedia at least, which I don't trust as a source. But anyway, Nayar is here referred to the Naga people, okay, from northeast India. Now, according to the myth, Naga live underwater. But if you take a look at the people from the northeast India, they don't live underwater. I took a look at a Najar warrior, and he looks like, I don't know if you saw this, but I believe it was called Roots or something. It was a series here we had, maybe 20, 30 years ago or something, and it was about this black tribe, this African tribe. Can't remember the name at the moment, but they got very fierce and they devised new war tactics, actually killing somebody instead of this play war that they had in Africa. And that's what he looked like. He looked like such a warrior with maybe a spear or a shield, you know, nothing fancy. So there's also, Naya is also related to the succession of the Naga tradition. Najar is here named as a caste of the South Indian state of Kerala, which is then what this Ernest Busenbach is referring to. And there's a whole other list of more, so I'm not going to go there. So that about Nayar. Continuing, on the island of Bombay, there is said to be a rock containing a natural cavity with an upper and lower entrance, which is used by the Gentvas as a means of purification. This, they say, is affected by going in at the lower opening and emerging from the upper opening. In Nepal, India, small perforated stones, generally about the size of an orange, are called salagrama. Are regarded as sacred to Vishnu. By a peculiar coincidence, similar stones called salangrana are wrapped in red woolen and carried in the pockets of persons in Tuscany, Italy, who practice sorcery. Creepy. Old adoption ceremonies still survive in some parts of the world in which the adopted person is symbolically reborn. Among the Bhairabas of Saravak, when a woman wishes to adopt a child or adult, a feast is arranged and the adopting mother is seated on a raised and covered seat. Then the adopted person crawls from behind and between her legs, thus imitating childbirth. Among the early Jews, a childless woman became a foster mother by merely having a real mother sit upon her knees during birth of the child. This is supposed to be in Genesis 33, where it says, apparently, supposedly, and Rachel said, "Behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I also have children by her." I'm Joost Walter. You can call in 716-213-6816. I'll keep an eye on the board here while I continue to read. Diodorus wrote that when Zeus persuaded his wife Hera to adopt Hercules, the goddess got into bed and, clasping the hero to her bosom, pushed him through her ropes and let him fall to the ground in imitation of real birth. In Diodorus' day, the same method of adopting children was practiced by the barbarians and is still used by Bulgarians and Bosnian Turks. A woman will take a boy whom she intends to adopt and push or roll him through her clothes. Ever afterward, he is regarded as her son. In passing to the underground chamber where the sacred rites of the Mithraic mysteries were conducted, Mithra has a whole concept of itself to be studied. So, in passing to the underground chamber where the sacred rites of the Mithraic mysteries were conducted, it was necessary for the initiates to pass through a narrow entrance leading to the cave or underground chamber, as if entering a womb. Above the chamber, a bull was sacrificed, and its blood flowed down through a wooden grating on to the initiate. Yuck. This was the Tauribolium ceremony, in which the initiate was purified and reborn in the blood of the bull. Purification, regeneration, and rebirth are certain to have been important features of the mysteries in Egypt, where the initiates appear to have been placed in a cradle of skin, or symbolic womb, from which they emerged, simulating the process of gestation and being thereby recreated and purified. The rite was probably in imitation of a myth which alleged that the sun god Ra was born in the form of a calf, from the cow Nut or Neith. The mother goddess of heaven, the initiate thus becoming identified with the sun god. Both Plutarch and Apuleius state that in the procession of Isis, a wooden image of a cow was borne upon the shoulders of the priests. It was probably an image of Nut, the divine cow mother of the gods, from whose womb the initiates were symbolically reborn. This rebirth issue, when you're still alive, is they call that initiation, and it's nonsense as far as I can see. I've seen the difference between initiated and non-initiated devotees. There isn't any. It's what can I say? It's just a ritual that is used in those circles. They in spiritual circles they will tell you that, oh, but this has to do with renaming your real self. Okay, and they get all real vague about what the self is because they have no clue. There is no real good explanation of what the spiritual self is. You can't give a good explanation of what the spiritual self is because the spiritual self defies any material words. You can't describe it in matter. It's supposedly, in their philosophy, a totally different energy. And nothing mortal, nothing that is created has a middle and an end, like the word Om or AUM. Nothing like that can describe what the real self is, because it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Anything here in this universe has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the self doesn't, according to their own philosophies. That's what they mean with the second birth. They mean the real self is supposed to come out. And of course it doesn't. In this material world, there is no manifestation of the real self. It can't happen. This is a material world, where only things that have a beginning, a middle, and an end can manifest itself. And there is no real evidence for the self in that sense. It's a philosophical idea, no more, no less. Okay. Let's continue here. Where were we? The mystery of Osiris and Isis was generally considered the most ancient of mysteries, being already in existence at the beginning of recorded history. Those who were admitted to the lesser mystery were dominated mystai, or veiled, while those who were initiated into the greater mystery were epoptai, or seers. Okay, I can say something about this seers, because seeing ties to knowing. Seeing ties to knowledge. A small example is when somebody asks you if you understand something. One could also ask, do you see now? It's a seeing that is done with your mind, okay? Another point to say about seeing is that real seeing, so actual seeing, always has to do with the truth. Because if you do not see properly, you are in illusion, which is like all of us, okay? So we are all considered blind. Because we have no truth. Truth is kept from us. We are kept in the dark. But this truth has nothing to do with magical powers or eternal life or things like that. They are unprovable. Magic and things like that are technologies unknown for us. A technology is not something that is shared. Because when you have power, technology includes that. It's a technocracy that we live in at the moment. You don't share that because power doesn't share. You don't do that. You don't tell your enemy, in this case not only in a false political game, but also humanity as a whole in itself as an enemy. You don't tell them what kind of technology you have at your disposal, because technology is always used against us. Okay, let's see, where were we? Yes, that about seers. Remember that real seeing has to do with truth, and then not in a sense of spiritual truth, but real truth in the sense that you understand that you have been fooled all your life about everything. You've been lied to about everything. They don't allow truth to come into society. It will upset their plan. So that's what the real truth, that's lifting a bit of the veil to the real truth, is to destroy all of that which is an illusion. And you must figure that out for yourself. You must break down all that you have been taught as supposed truth and look at it for what it is and see if there's maybe something wrong here. That's what real seeing is. Continuing. The ancient rite of purification, death, and resurrection has been continued as an initiation rite in certain religious orders down to modern times. After passing through several preliminary grades, novice monks and nurse, clad in white, are placed in coffins in front of the altar, while the Mass is sung. Sound familiar to you, this coffin stuff? This is when the novices become professed. Owing to their secret nature, very little information has come down to us regarding the rites of the mysteries. So, let's continue here. From what is known of their beliefs, however, it is safe to conclude that the rites included a symbolic dramatization of the processes of nature: conception, birth, growth, death, and resurrection. Why is that in nature? Where do you see a resurrection in nature? It is only in a allegorical way that one can see that, like, for instance, the snake shedding its skin. But and there's another thing here: conception and birth. They could be considered the same. because the conception is where the living part of this whole story begins. Okay, birth has to do with your physical appearance. Okay, but as said before in the previous hour, you have to always remember that they have a totally skewed view of what the self is. They think that it's immortal and that it's, it has a range of what they call absolute properties, immortal being one of them. It also claims that a soul cannot be moved. Okay, so there's no such thing as movement in an absolute world. Okay, so birth in that sense means that you, yourself, your absolute self, is entering the material world. And that happens at conception, not at birth. So these two can be considered the same. And then it's growth and death. So those are the three things then that you end up with. Conception or birth, that's one. Growth and death, they are the second and third, growth being the middle part. There's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. So, that's also a trinity, by the way. The Eleusinian mysteries, which took place in the Greek village of Eleusis, were probably the most elaborate. Is that where we get the word elusive from? I'm not sure, just guessing here. They covered a period of 8 days and were divided into the lesser and greater mysteries, with the final act taking place in the Temple of Demeter. The annual periods of plant growth and death were probably symbolized by a dramatization of the abduction of Persephone by Pluto and the efforts of her mother, which resulted in Persephone being restored to the earth for half of each year. Yeah, this is what they then allegorically see as a resurrection, is simply the 4 seasons of the year. Determination of the symbolic meaning of trees is complicated by the fact that in various periods and places they have been features of spiritism and totemism, as well as phallicism. As a phase of primitive worship, they were placed in consecrated ground near altars and high places, as representatives of the deity and as his dwelling place. This seems to have been the belief of Abraham when he sought God in the oaks and tamarisks of Mamre, and when he planted a tree at Beersheba, and called Therion the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. Genesis 21:23. It was an expression of totemism that made oak trees sacred to Jupiter and Zeus, and caused the Druids to hold the oak and yew sacred, and use hollow oaks for burial of the dead. Early Spartans laid the dead upon olive leaves and palm branches. The male palm tree was a necessary accompaniment of all phallic and solar festivals, and was used prominently in temple decoration. It is found repeatedly on ancient coins and tablets, always with 7 branches. In Egypt, a palm branch was an emblem of Tat, the scribe of the gods. The scribe of the gods. There's also an Indian scribe of the gods. This whole in the first hour I talked a little bit about the Vedas. The Vedas were supposedly written down Vasudeva. These names. Yeah, Vasudeva was his name. And but Vasudeva did not actually write it, he just spoke it. And his scribe was the son of Shiva. He's rather peculiar looking. He's got an elephant head. Yeah. Where was I? In Egypt? Scribe. Yeah, right. The branches were carried in religious processions as symbols of self-creation, time, and perpetuity, because they were set to add one new front with each change of the moon. In the book of Revelations, palms seem to possess the same significance, because it retained its verdure throughout the year. The pine tree was an emblem of immortality and was often represented on Assyrian monuments. Okay, so verdure, or however you pronounce that, means the green color, because it keeps it all through the year. It is seen as an emblem of immortality, and was often represented on Assyrian monuments and Etruscan funeral urns. While I continue, from Ernest Busenbach. The pine cone was a symbol of Venus and Astarte. During the Thesmophoria festival in Greece, images of phalli and snakes were made of dough and, together with pine cones, were dedicated to the goddess as emblems of fertility. Pine cones may still be seen on gateways in Italy, where they are regarded as emblems of fecundity. Right, there's that word that I came upon again, and I said, well, we got to look that up. So I did. Fecundity. I looked also at the correct pronunciation. It sounds a bit too much like the F word. But it has to do with that. So fecundity derived from the word fecund, or something like that, or fecund, generally refers to the ability to reproduce. In demography, fecundity is a potential reproductive capacity of an individual or population. So there we go. Solve that. So, not only were pine cones regarded as emblems of fecundity, they're also for good health and good fortune. In the Phoenician myth of the sun god Attis, it was under a pine tree that the hero died and was reborn the following spring. To Chaldeans, the cedar represented not only the tree of life, but the revealer of the oracles of earth and heaven as well. The name of Ea, I heard that Ea is another name for Enki. Enki and Enlil. The name of Ea, god of wisdom, was supposed to be written on its core, and Ningishzida was master of the tree of life. This tree of life, most of the times that I read about it, it just reminds me of the DNA. Yeah, that's also a tree of life. The laurel or bay was the victor crown, the wreath of Mars and of those to whom their fellows wishes to pay honor. It was sacred to Apollo. The first temple at the Oracle of Delphi was built of laurel. The chewing of bay leaves was thought to give one the ability to make prophecies. Yeah. Another one of those absolute properties I mentioned is all-knowing. And you might think there's a a problem there. Because if you're all-knowing, that would mean, supposedly, that the future is set and that you can't change the future. How else would you be able to be all-knowing, right? Okay, but that's not a correct way of thinking. Hold on, Jeff. Just let me continue here. I'll get to you in a sec. Why is this not a correct way of thinking? Because there may be possible futures. So that doesn't stand in the way of an absolute property like all-knowing. So I have a caller. Welcome, Jeff, from Massachusetts. What can I do for you?
You were talking about, rituals and stuff like that, and I figure I'll go along with what you're talking about. Number one, if you look at all these ancient rituals, guess what? The elite do the same thing, and the elite are trying to spread the perversion by having all of us doing it. I mean, if you look at music videos, they get into some high level illuminist kind of stuff that does these type of rituals. Rap music in particular. Rap music is the worst music around. It's jungle music, voodoo from the Congo and from these heathen countries, and so forth. So people are literally influenced by that kind of music, by the hip hop videos, and the public fool system influences people to become heathens too. So we have pretty much become a heathen society. I mean, Massachusetts has gay marriage, which is homosexuality. The last step before society degenerates, any society, it goes into heathenism, to where people are fornicating with dogs. God, it's just sick, perverted, and that's where the Western world is right now, at varying levels. Just this wicked perversion, and mark my words, you do a study of history of other nations that have gone this way, it usually gets destroyed and taken over by another nation.
The music is destroyed and taken over by another nation? Is that what you said?
No, what I'm saying is, I'm talking about indicators of heathenism in a culture. Music, the rap music is one of them. The TV pushing these videos is another one. The public fool system pushing their propaganda. And in my state of Massachusetts, we have homosexual marriage where two men are able to marry each other. Yeah. And you look at the debauchery of what the elite do. The elite are pushing their heathenism upon the Western world, and that's what's happening. It's worse in certain areas than others.
Yeah, this whole gay marriage thing, it's stupid. I mean, why would we give a certain group of people more rights than we all already supposed to have as humans, right?
Oh yes, I'm going to get going because I got a train to catch. But I will say this: this is where it degenerates. It degenerates into the Greek culture to where adult men were sodomizing kids, to where it was blessed by ancient Greece before they collapsed, the Spartan model. And in America, you have NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Society Association, and this is where these perverts want to take this. I mean, we are going to hell as an American culture and as a Western culture. Some parts are in a deeper part of hell than others, and then eventually into bestiality and vile perversion. And that's what these elite are like, and they want to spread it throughout the world. And that's the end game, and that's the New World Order. Saul, I thank you for having me on the broadcast, and do have a good one.
You're welcome, Jeff. Yes, Jeff is pointing to the culture destruction that we have been under since before I was born. Continue here. Holy trees are both male and female, the prickly species being male, the non-prickly being female. And there is an old superstition to the effect that whichever kind of holy enters a house at Christmas time determines whether the husband or wife shall dominate in the coming year. According to another tradition, the maiden who wishes to see her future husband should pin the holy on her nightdress over her heart and go to sleep with 3 pails of water in her room. And if further prophecy is desired, leaves of the female holy must, on the night of the Venus day, that's Friday, be tied in a handkerchief and slept upon in perfect silence until Saturn's morn at Saturday. Within the past century, a custom prevailed in Europe of cutting hawthorn, or how you pronounce that, haythorn, hawthorn, I don't know, and elm twigs, and wearing them during the month of May. Together they were called May, and persons who did not wear them during this month risked being thoroughly ducked in the water. Because of the great social changes we have taken place in modern times, many old customs of this kind have practically vanished, except in more or less isolated communities. In outlying districts of the British Isles, for instance, there is a very old belief that the rowan, or mountain ash, is a protection against evil. And it has been the custom to place a staff of ash over doorposts to ward off malign influences. Scots shepherds drive their flock to the hills with ash staffs, and on Beltane or May Day, sheep and lambs are passed through hoops of ash. Ash trees are always planted near holy places, such as churchyards and stone circles or claghans. Pious persons are in the habit of wearing crosses of ash on a certain day of the year. A fertile god formerly worshipped in Northern Europe was called Yggdrasil, meaning ash tree. Is that so? That's from Tolkien. He also uses Yggdrasil. I bet a lot of his names and such come from Nordic myth. Yggdrasil. Nice. In Suffolk, what's this? Everything okay? Yeah, everything okay. In Suffolk, England, it is a custom to split a young ash tree lengthwise and pass a naked child through it, 3 times head first, but some say feet first, to cure rickets and rapture. Rupture. There's a rapture. That's another thing. The child is then turned around and, as the Celts say, passed diesel-wise, that is, with the sun, after which the cleft in the tree is bound up. If the tree heals, all is supposed to go well with the child. The tree should be split about 5 feet, as nearly as possible from east to west, and just as the sun is rising in the early spring before vegetation begins. In Suffolk, the operation is called drawing. In Cornwall, passing through the cleft of a tree has the same significance as passing through an aperture in a rock, or threading the needle, as it is called. In Killarney, the operation is said to be of a fertilizing nature and brings a saving of pain to women in a certain way. In Oxford, an old custom of like meaning is practiced with groaning cheese, a piece of which, cut in circular or oval form, must be kept ready at birth to pass the newborn babe through. Afterward, the cheese is cut like a wedding cake and given to girls to sleep upon, to excite pleasant and expressive dreams. Yeah. In Scandinavia, the hazel tree was formerly sacred to Thor, and in Bohemia, hazel groves were favorite spots for temples. In Bavaria, batons of office were always made of hazelwood, and divining rods were made of hazel. Bohemians believed that wherever there were nuts, there were wasps, and women were fruitful. Gee. Also, that wherever nuts were found, illegitimate children abounded. What are nuts? Huh? Should a snake bite a hazel rod, the rod was believed to turn at once into a bluish stone, which, if thrown into water, would cure an animal of snakebite. Strange practices, huh? Pliny observed that the Roman hung colored rags and other offerings on sacred trees. Travelers in the East have mentioned the same custom in modern times. In India, according to Ferguson, rags in the form of a yoni-like loops are hung from budding twigs and branches. The branch and loop symbolize the union of the male and female creative powers. The rite of tree marriage still survives in India as a conventional symbol of totemism. Sacred trees are circumambulated by Najar women desiring children, and by men who wish to avoid the evil influence of Saturn, under which they are supposed to suffer during some parts of their lives. Phallic poles may still be found near temples and in villages in the Orient, adorned like our maypoles, with brightly colored banners or streamers. Sometimes the figure of a rooster, an emblem of the sun and vicinity, or some other phallic figure, is placed at the top of a pole. By the way, language... where was I? The custom of children dancing around the maypole is derived from the ancient custom of dancing around a tree trunk or pole in springtime, in token of the annual resurgence of the generative powers of nature. It says here the generative powers of nature. This is a idea that needs further investigation, because it's not quite clear where this power of life is coming from. These generative forces or regenerative forces. Generative has to do with life. Gene, the word generate has the word gene in it. DNA, okay, that's life. So it is unclear whether just basic chemical elements, when put together in a certain fashion, are responsible for life. Okay, it's not proven like that. So you shouldn't read generative powers of nature like that. The unprovable spiritual way of looking at this is that life is non-material. It cannot express itself in a material way. That's why there's different life forms. Okay, you got your tiger, you got your tree, you got your human, and so on and so on. So those are different life forms. But what life itself is totally unclear. There's no way of getting a good description of that. Okay, continuing. England was once noted for its maypoles. In writing about the general letdown of morals, which marked the Maytime celebrations, Philip Stubbs, a Puritan writer of Queen Elizabeth's time, made it clear why May was often called the month of bastards. Stubbs said that with the arrival of May, men, women and children assembled from every parish, town and village and went to the hills and forests, where they spent the night in pleasant pastimes. In the morning they returned, carrying birch branches and the trunk of a tall young tree. They painted the tree in the various colors, decked it with flowers and banners and set it upon the village green. In some instances, small trees were fastened securely in boxes and placed at the top of the poles. Every morning during May, the parishioners of St. Andrew under Shaft in London, Andrews under Shaft in London, set up a shaft which was higher than the church steeple, and after their ceremony, they carefully put it away under the eaves of the church, which were built so as to protect it. Puritans took offense at the custom and cut the poles to pieces. In 1644, Parliament passed an act for the suppression of maypoles. The worship of trees as symbols of male generative power was widespread among ancient nations, and it was in this sense that trees, tree trunks, posts and pails became prominent in the worship by the Jews in Canaan of gods of fertility. On ancient Babylonian tablets and seal cylinders, trees are represented as symbols of the tree of life, or the euphemistic tree which creates life. It is the same tree which, in the story of Adam and Eve, is disguised as the tree of knowledge. Well, there were two trees there in the Eden, in the garden, that they weren't supposed to eat from. One of them being the tree of knowledge. Now, there's another thing I can explain there. It's that before they supposedly ate from this tree of knowledge, and they were ungodlike, supposedly, you can turn that around as well. This knowledge that they speak of has to do with dualism. This is the nature of the universe that we live in. That is the knowledge that they talking about. But there is another knowledge, a different kind of knowledge. This has to do with the absolute nature of things, which again cannot be proven. There is not a way in which you can use matter to prove the existence of an absolute world or an absolute form. So those are different kinds of knowledge. One has to do with the unprovable absolute world, and another has to do with the dualistic material universe that we live in. And so this knowledge that they gained had everything to do with material universe. And you gain this knowledge by entering it and identifying with it. That's what happens to us. When we get born, we grow older, we tend to identify with our body, which is a mistake. But it naturally happens. And this identification leads to knowledge about what's going on in this world. You got your 5 senses, and you should use your intellect to find out what's going on. Okay, that's also picking of the tree of knowledge, as we could speak it. Okay, continuing. To people of the East, wise in the language of symbolism, the meaning of the tree of life, which flourishes in a paradise of garden, is perfectly obvious. Conventional representation of the tree of life in the form of an upright wooden pillar or tree trunks, and called asherim, translated groves in the Bible. were special symbols of the Syrian god Baal and often had obscene design carved on their surfaces. Even in the temple at Jerusalem, there stood an upright Asherah. The temple of Baal Peor, the Phalus of Priapus of the Jews. That's in 1 Kings 23:6. The image of jealousy, which Ezekiel said could be seen upon looking north through the inner gate of the temple, was undoubtedly an Asherah, Ezekiel 8:3. So Asherah is a pillar, a symbol of Phalek. Baal corresponded to the Assyrian god Asher. And Baal corresponded to the Assyrian god Asher and was represented as being either male, female, or both. Therefore, an androgen. Although he is nominally male, Baal is called the lady in Hosea 2:8 and Zephyr something 1.4. At his licentious rites, men who wore female garments and women wore male attire. Wow. The feminine form of Baal was called Beltis, Astarte, or Astorath. Astorath sounds like Asterix, and was represented by a feminine form of wooden emblem and called Ashira or Ashara, signifying the door of life, and was probably similar in appearance to the Assyrian type shown on plate 67. Ashira is, by the way, another example. When I was making Dutch radio, I took this game. It's called Diablo, and I pointed out all the mythological symbology in there. Ashira is one of them. She's a non-playing character in Act 3. So there's many references in that game to occult things. They also have runes and stuff, and all runes have names, which a lot of them have occult background.